Hey, Mike Gillette here with the question, what should you do if something you want to do is something you're afraid to do? Here's why I asked that today. Had a phone call a short time ago with the mother of a very young gymnast, female gymnast, 6 years old. Don't usually take calls from parents of athletes that old. My cutoff is 12. Once I took an 11-year-old. I've never worked one-on-one with anyone below that age, and it's just a combination of things that mostly has to do with the nature of how I work is much like this. We're sharing information that is conveyed and then absorbed within the cognitive domain. Okay, this is intellectually delivered information that is processed intellectually on the part of the receiver. And in an effort to have the highest success rate that I can, a reasonable likelihood to expect success, I like to deal with an age where it's reasonable to assume that the person I'm talking to can intellectually understand what it is that I'm saying. But the earnestness of the request, the fact that it's a gymnast and it had to do with an issue that I'm well aware of, led me to take the call. So here, for those of you non-gymnasts, which is probably most of you, it's a situation that frequently occurs with girls in gymnastics, where they will develop a particular fear, and their fear has to do with skills that are initiated by going backwards. So imagine doing a front handspring, if you could imagine yourself doing that. Okay, now imagine going backwards and doing that, just on a padded surface. Okay, it's a little uncomfortable, it's a little alarming perhaps. Okay, so now imagine doing that, say, on a balance beam. Imagine doing several of them in a row on a balance beam. You know, the danger factor or the risk factor obviously increases exponentially. So what sometimes happens is a gymnast has a bad experience. Perhaps they fall and they get hurt, or they've got some other anxiety, and that anxiety starts showing up in higher risk techniques, such as anything involving going backwards. So going backwards can become a sticking point, and it can become the catalyst for leaving the sport altogether. You know, so some athletes just never get past that issue of, hey, I'm afraid to go backwards. There's a lot of essential skills that entail going backwards. I guess I'm done. And some athletes are frustrated when they leave the sport, and some, I think, leave the sport because, look, it's grueling, it's terrifying, it's complicated, it's stressful. Fill in the blank. There's plenty of reasons to leave gymnastics and pursue less stressful activities. So here we are. We've got this 6-year-old, and I'm talking to the mother of the 6-year-old, and I'm explaining Mike Gillette's worldview and how Mike Gillette solves problems versus how other people within the sport might try to work in a similar circumstance, which usually is about making the athlete comfortable, finding ways to make the athlete more and more comfortable, and maybe that athlete will eventually feel so comfortable that, oh my goodness, they might at some point maybe possibly go backwards, but we're not going to rush anything. My belief is that you can't take scariness out of scary things. There's a reason certain things are scary, because they're supposed to be. And it's simply an intellectual realization on the part of the athlete that, hey, some of the stuff I do, it's dangerous. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a question of, oh, now that you've figured that out, what do we do with that information? And from my point of view, if this is something important to you, if you want to do gymnastics, if you want to do it well, you do scary stuff sometimes, even when it scares you. Sounds pretty simple. Easier said than done, obviously. But that's the approach from which I work, and that's the conclusion that I start at, and I attempt to pull the athlete closer and closer to that point where they can be afraid and still do their stuff, do scary stuff, even though they're scared. So I imparted that information. We'll see if that is a suitable solution for this particular very small, very young gymnast. In the meantime, what should you do if you're wanting to do something meaningful, something important, something of consequence, and you're afraid to? Well, you probably know where I'm going to go with this. I say you should do it. I say you should do the thing. Don't look for confidence. Don't look for a feeling. Look for courage. What is courage? Courage is a decision model. Courage is a set of choices that you make based on how you want to live your life. You want to do amazing, glorious things? You need courage, because some of those things are going to be terrifying. And I want you to do terrifying things. I want you to discover what it's like to do terrifying things. And I want you to see who you become when you do terrifying things. Seek the scary. That's where greatness lives.